good morning and good afternoon and also good evening to all the viewers that are watching this session, probably in different parts of the world. I'm going to be talking about something which is very critical and very pivotal to the times that we're living in. I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now because I'm going to come back to that and I'm going to talk about why that is important just in a while. What you're seeing in front of you is the official United Nations Sustainable Development Goals website. So I work with the United Nations as an ambassador to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I've been doing that for quite a few years. And apart from, almost 20 years of working with EdTech and the K12, the topic that we are basically going to be talking about today is, of course, the future of EdTech assimilation with the K12 sector. This is not just affecting countries like India or Southeast Asia, like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh. This is a global phenomenon. So I'm going to try and my objective is I want to make this session as interactive as possible. So anyone and everyone who is watching everywhere, it's going to be a two-way stream. I'm going to be asking certain questions to you. And at the same time, I would really love if you ask me certain questions about what I'm talking about today. So first, let's start with the introduction of the topic that we're looking at itself. We're looking at the future of EdTech assimilation with K12. I want to ask a question now, if anyone is listening, and if the moderator could find if there is any, then if there is any response that we're getting, then we will discuss that response. The simple question that I want to ask you is, how many of you during the pandemic, of course, during the complete lockdown, were using an EdTech tool, whether for your child or directly for your job, or in any format? Did you use technology for learning and education in the last 3 years? That's the first question that I wanted to ask. And it would be great if I could understand if anyone is watching, and if anyone is saying, yes, I have used it, or no, I haven't used it, or I've been using it for work. Any of the responses that are coming in, if they're coming in, it would be great if the moderator could share with me. So I'll repeat the question. The question is quite simple. What I want to know is, in the last 3 to 4 years, since the pandemic happened, or even before the pandemic for the matter, because I've been using technology in education. It's been more than, I've been using it for 10 years. The pandemic was not a catalyst for me to use technology to kind of, run the show. So I want to know your perspective. I would love to know, the people who are watching this, that was it the pandemic that drove you to use an EdTech tool to teach your child, or to learn, do a course, for example, continuing education for your job, or if you're working in EdTech, you got a job because of the pandemic. So there are different kinds of modalities that we're going to be looking at today. And right now, the world is at a very critical stage when it comes to the future of EdTech assimilating with K12, that is kindergarten to 12th grade. So when we say kindergarten to 12th grade, that's till high school. And of course, after that, we talk about something called CE, continuing education. So continuing education is nothing but for working professionals, when we're using Coursera and all these different kinds of formats to upscale ourselves. So I'm going to stop here for a second, and I'm going to wait for any answer. If it has come in, I would request the moderator to just let me know if anyone has responded to my question. And the question is, again, very simple. I'll repeat. Have you used technology in the form of education in the last 3 to 4 years? So I'm going to just pause, Mr. Rabit, and I'll just wait for any answer that might be coming in from anyone, for that matter. And then we are going to move ahead, if that's okay. So I'm just pausing for a second, and I'm just waiting for any response that might be coming in from, anyone from anyone from anywhere. Just do let me know if there is no response so that I can move forward with my talk. Mr. Rubit, Zahir, are you there in the session?
Yes, sir.
Right. So the question, I hope, is understood. And anyone who is watching, see, my way of doing a webinar or a workshop or a conference or event is I believe in human contact. I might be sitting in another one part of one country, does not make me less human, or does not make you less human. So in order to make the session really interesting, in order to get into this topic, we have to talk to each other. So since you are allowed to post questions, and I would like you to post questions, so my first thing is that I want to post a question to you. So if you're watching, please try and respond. You can even write a yes, no, or something. Some kind of response would really be great. So Mr. Rubit, you can just let me know if you are getting any response on this question. Question is again very simple. Have we been using any kind of educational technology in the last 3 years, or during the lockdown in any part of the world, or were we using it even before? That's simply the question. That's it. That's nothing more to it. So please do let me know if anyone is responding. Otherwise,
Sir,
we'll.
Currently there's no response, but if someone answers your question, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Not a problem. Okay. So if we do get a response, we will love to hear it from you guys, because the whole logic of this topic is the future of EdTech assimilation. Let me give you a background to my own journey. I come from a military background, and I got an opportunity to do my master's at Oxford University. After that, I got an opportunity to work with the corporate sector with Apple for about 5 years. And I had a keen interest in understanding how technology can be harnessed to its maximum potential when it comes to education without destroying the core ethics of education. Okay, so to give you an example, Google Classroom is something that schools have been using, or LMS like Atlas is something that schools in not just in India, any Cambridge or IB or even a CBSE or any board school in India, in Pakistan, or any part of the world, back in the US, they've been using a lot of these tools way back before the pandemic. So, which again brings me to another second question, which I wanted to ask you guys. Why do you think that the pandemic forced us to use the word EdTech so strongly? Were we not using technology with education before the pandemic? Or did the pandemic define EdTech to us? Is that something that happened during the pandemic? To give you an answer, I've been using tools like Moodle, Google Classroom, or any of these elements for the last almost 6 to 7 years, right from back in UK, in Thailand, in Bhutan, in India, wherever I've been working. I've been using these tools, right? So I really, again, wanted to ask a question, but I'm not sure if anyone is open to answering that. Have you been using technology in education for the last 7 to 8 years? Or have you been a person who's always balanced technology along with, let's say, education? And it doesn't have to be education of just schooling. It can be any kind of education. It can be an education where you're working as a trainer. It can be an education format where you could be working as a, a voice and accent trainer. So it can be any kind of education. So what I am very interested in, to know is, again, if people are listening, that has there been technology in your life before the pandemic, and have you been forced to redefine how technology as a terminology comes to you, especially when I use the word educational technology during the lockdown and after? Let's say now the world is kind of slowly trying to get out of the pandemic. Bear in mind that the pandemic is here to stay. So my question is again very simple. Mr. Rubik, you can just let me know if any responses are coming, or we will just move ahead with our session.
Okay.
Okay. So since we are moving ahead with the session, I suppose what I wanted to talk to you about is my own journey. For example, I'm going to be sharing my screen with you. Just hang on. Just let me check with the host. Do I need to mute myself while I open the file? Am I audible to you? Any?
Yes, we can
any
hear you.
resistance?
You were muted. That's why I asked you that you were muted. Now we can hear you.
All right, perfect, perfect. So I was just saying that I'm just opening a file and sharing the screen. I basically wanted to show the people of whoever is watching that during the pandemic, how we worked on, the EdTech element, the why EdTech was very strong at a certain point, in our lives. So I'm going to be talking to you about that today, right? I mean, because that's one of the core elements, right? All right, so I'm just going to share my screen. Just bear with me for a second. Let me see if my presentation is here. All righty. Okay. Let's put it on a full screen. Okay. Just bear with me for a second. And Roger. All right. So Rankpedia is a company where I was working during the boom of the EdTech. I was the CEO and also the chief academic officer and chief executive officer, for the last 2 years. Rankpedia is a very a typical EdTech company in Bangalore. To give you a background, I wanted to create a new element in EdTech technology. My logic was, I had been studying, education technology for the last 3 years. I saw the boom of a lot of companies that say, we've all heard of the company called Byju's, and we know that after that, there was a massive explosion in how education technology was taken forward in our country and the world. But I want to give you a very interesting story. There's a company called VIP Kid, okay? They've been doing one-to-one online classes right from 1998, where teachers from native countries, and this is very important for us to also listen to. It's a company that only deals with teaching English, okay? And you have to be, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but you have to be a native speaker. That means you have to be only from the countries where English is the first language. Second, it doesn't matter if you have experience or not. What matters is that you should be white. So there has been a lot of racial element, unfortunately, involved in education, especially in international education for the last 3 decades, I would say. So the interesting part is why I'm talking about this, that education technology has been used in our world successfully right from the 90s when the internet was not very strong. So VIP Kid used to follow a very simple model, which is one-to-one. So one white teacher from, let's say, the 5 countries, America, Britain, Australia, anywhere where you're born, where English is the first language, you would get an opportunity, you'll get a job. You'll have a kid in China where you'll be teaching them English one-to-one. And probably way back in the 90s, the charges were, you were paid about $8 US an hour, and now it's come down to almost like 14 US. So the problem in the education sector is that we never looked at quality way back, especially when we are talking about English. Now, when I'm talking to you in English, there are different kinds of accents and there are different kinds of pronunciations. And till today, till this date, if you hold a passport from, let's say your name is Mr. Karandeep Singh, you've done your PhD. Mr. Karandeep Singh, for example, I'm talking third person, has been featured in Forbes for his work. I've been featured in Fortune magazine. I have consecutively for the last 4 years won Principal of the Year and been recognized with the government. I work for the United Nations. But even today, if I apply in Southeast Asia, let's say countries like Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, or China, even for that matter, I am not saying that it's not changing, but your name, the color of your skin, and where you come from can end up deciding if you get a job in language teaching. And this is something that I experienced firsthand. And because I've done my CELTA and eventually I did my Delta from Cambridge University. And Delta is the highest qualification in the world to become a qualified teacher trainer to teach English as a foreign language, run by Cambridge. Despite that, I had to really struggle to get a job outside India in teaching English language. So the reason I shared this perspective with you is that way back in the 90s, we were already using technology and we were already assimilating technology into the K12 sector, into one-to-one language teaching. It's not something new. So I'm going to be busting a lot of myths today. I'm known to be a myth buster. Myth busting is that there are a lot of misconceptions or stereotypes that it was technology boom that just happened, right? In the last 3 years or 4 years, and the so-called amazing terms of entrepreneurs, edupreneurs, agripreneurs, or you name a word and you put a preneur with it, you have it now. The guy next door to you who opened a vegetable shop maybe 7 years ago, 10 years ago, was also an entrepreneur. Whenever you open a new form of business, you are an entrepreneur by default. So the fancy element of glorifying this term, yes, sort of exploded in the last 4 years, but we've always had entrepreneurs. The terminology, the definition of an entrepreneur never changed. It got a new metamorphosis during the lockdown. So I'm going to be talking to you about Rankpedia. Why I'm giving you this example is because I'm going to bring this example and then I'm going to show you why and how Rankpedia was one of my pet projects, where I wanted to create a technology-based model where the biggest problem that I saw in the world, not just in India, was that we were using the best of technology, amazing videos. Companies like Byju's are able to afford video production from, Disney. We're able to produce the best of audio, video, 3D, 2D based educational products. But the problem is we're still stuck on the screen. So what we failed to realize, and that's going to come as the next topic that I'm going to ask you, that I'm going to talk about, is that that was one of the reasons of decline of the EdTech. When we talk about the EdTech decline happening right now massively in India, and also it has a strong imprint back in the US. It primarily happened because most of the EdTech companies never had a 5-year projection. I'm going to talk from business and I'm going to talk from education because I come from both the directions. So from the business perspective, we fail to realize that at some point when the pandemic gets over and the schools are open, right? Physically open, offline, what will the parent choose? Will the parent choose an online product, or will the parent want to send the kid back to the school? Could be for various reasons. Reason number one, the parent is like, finally, I can push the kid back out And what we used to call back in the day, back in 2000, early 2000s, surrogate parenting. This is something that, again, I might sound critical at some points, but surrogate parenting is that it's a Western concept that has been beautifully adapted by our Eastern elements. So, the irony of our world is back in our East, we love to adopt a lot of educational elements from the West. And ironically, the West is looking for answers to the East when it comes to the metacognition or the metaphysics or quantum physics or spirituality for that matter. So the irony is when it comes to especially education, both the East and the West are always looking for answers between each other. However, yes, still till this day, there is a racial element, communal element, which is affecting educators. But the good news is it's stopping. So I'm going to give you some numbers here. Just bear with me. Okay, I need to. All right. So I wanted to share with you, this is my research that I had to do before starting the company. Because my whole logic was that if I'm going to create another EdTech company, which is just going to be like any other company in the country, because in India, they grow like mushrooms. They were rather growing like mushrooms before 2022. Every corner would have an EdTech company because it was a simple herd mentality. That means that if I can, if one company can be successful, why can't I be successful? So everyone wanted to cash in. Everyone wanted to make the big buck. So a lot of people from America would start funding Indian companies. A lot of people from different countries would start funding companies in India. There were a lot of investors interested. People would start investing right back in Series 1 when the company would not even be ready with their wireframes of their product. When I say wireframes, even the apps are not ready in the wireframe mode. Forget about the actual application. So people were extremely optimistic during the pandemic because they thought this is it. But sometimes we say common sense is not common. So the problem was we did not realize that if education opens back in a physical mode, what will the parent choose? And this has been a question that I've been asking for the whole duration of the pandemic. So what I'm showing you is an analysis of the National Education Research of India. What's the current enrollment numbers? Why did I create a company like Rankpedia as a CEO? What was the need for creating this kind of an organization? This is something that you need to know, because then I'm going to be coming to the next segment of the session. So we're going to be looking at certain very important numbers in India, especially, and this is very similar to the United States. There is amount of numbers that drop out of the schooling system, what we call GER. So in India, it's called gross enrollment ratio. That means what is the annual enrollment ratio into the schools. And shockingly, if you look at my slide, you will see that in secondary level, almost 20% of the kids are dropping out. That means 20% of the population of the country has never finished high school, which is a shocking number. Now, the EdTech assimilation to K12 works in two ways. EdTech assimilation happened to K12 because schools had no choice. And I'm being very prudent and very honest with you, and very pragmatic actually. When the pandemic hit, the parent wanted answers. Okay, why should I pay the fee? In countries like India, Pakistan, and similar countries, even for that matter in UAE, most of the educational entities are owned by private owners. So their survival is depending on the fee. So when you were actually sending your kid to the school, schools could charge you all kinds of fee, computer fees, electricity fee, this fee, that fee. But now the kid is stuck at school, at home, sitting on the screen. How can I charge computer fee? So what was the solution? The solution was, this is where the EdTech, you can say, industry sort of showcased their charm. And in a way, this was the best of the worst of the worst of the best that the industry could get. I'm not someone who's critiquing EdTech. Please bear in mind, I'm not someone who is pessimistic about EdTech, but I'm going by facts. The fact is that when I'm talking to you right now, every 5 minutes, 6 to 7 edtechs in our country, in India, are going bankrupt or are filing for bankruptcy. And this is happening at a very phenomenal, fast rate. And anyone who might be listening, right? And moderator, I would just like to ask you, because having done these sessions for a long time, just want to understand, do we have any audience that is listening to our session right now? Mr. Adil or Mr. Zahir, do we have any people listening to us right now?
So there is an audience, but they're not responding yet because they sometimes join the session, then they leave. So that's why we can't assure that they are in the session.
Okay, so you're saying there is audience, but they're not responding yet. Okay. Right. So what you're looking at your screen, as I showed you, is a very scary number. In India, 35,000, oh, sorry, you know, the number that you see on the screen, I've lost my math there. The number of students that are out of the education system is almost hitting 35 crore. And this is a survey that I did 3 years back. So you can imagine what would be the dropout rate in this country. What EdTech has done has created a digital divide in our country. When I say digital divide, there is a kid in a tier 1 city who can easily access a fancy product like QMath, you know, Topper, or even Rankpedia for that matter, or Byju's, because A, the internet connectivity is excellent. They come from middle or upper middle class families, they can afford. But at the same country, you have over 65% of the population of the kids who cannot access or have not been able to access EdTech for the last 4 years. So anyone who's familiar with the Indian education system would know that the national education policy was pushed out by the government in the year 2020, which is nothing but a copy of the Finnish education system plus the IGCSE Cambridge curriculum. So when we talk about these numbers, I wanted you to know that this is very similar to our Asian countries, especially to my neighbors, to all my neighbors, to the developing countries here in Asia. Why kids are dropping out? And you'll be shocked to know, when I did my survey, I was able to find out that apart from, you know, obviously we know that a lot of boys right from young age, parents don't have any trust in the education system. So if you're a shopkeeper for the last 5 generations, your kid will be a shopkeeper. Girls are groomed for domestic activities because they're just supposed to be wonderful wives. Financial constraints have been almost 70% of the reason why kids have not been able to join decent so-called private schools. And ironically, almost 90 or 87% is that they are genuinely not interested in education. When I say genuinely not interested in education, it's not that they're not interested in knowing, it's that they've lost faith in the system, because the system is only catering, or rather had been catering, to tier 1, maximum tier 2 cities. Hence, my logic was, if I was going to create an EdTech company, it had to have a mass reach, which is not easy to do. Let me tell you, we have zones in our developing countries which are called dropout zones or dead zones, where you don't even have single bar of even 2G network, and the world is talking about 5G. And I'm living in a country where you know, we're talking about all these fancy things, but we are still in the same country where we're talking about technology which is working with Disney, and we're talking about trying to save the female fetus from being killed at the time of birth or before birth. There are posters in our country where I'm going to use a Hindi term which says Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, which basically means that save the girl child and let her be educated. So my question to all the educationists has always been that if you call yourself an educationist, have you ever thought about answering this question? Or this is something that is not for you to answer, or you feel that this is something that cannot be solved? So you can call me an idealist here, but the kind of solutions that I came up with is I realized that students cannot work without the involvement of parents. And I also realized that schools or edtechs cannot work without governments being involved. Finland has been named the happiest country in the world for a very simple reason, because they have the #1 education system for the last 5 years continuously. The education system has been successful because the public sector, the government sector, has been extremely successful in making sure that the hybrid model works well. So I'm going to quickly take you through the 3 kinds of verticals that I would look at. This is the educational framework that I built for an edtech company, where I realized that if you are someone who's interested in tennis, or you're interested in being a chef, why would I put you through the churning cycle of, after the age of 16 to 19, go to university, then you do your bachelor's, master's, and doctors, and then you become a tennis player? No, right? After your 10 years, at the age of probably 16, I will put you into vocational and apprenticeship training, and I'll put you straight away into work experience so that you can get into the professional career that you're actually good at. If you're born a prodigy, we all know the term prodigy. If you're born a prodigy, then you don't have to actually, go through this whole system. But I'm going to stop the slide here and just ask again a simple question. I'm getting the feeling that I can't see people possibly responding to or I don't know, possibly watching this, because I'm very interested to show you something very important that I wanted to show you after this. But see, I believe in engagement, and so far I don't know whether the audience is here, not here, watching somewhere else, watching it on YouTube or other channels where they're not able to ask questions. But if you are anywhere, even if there's one person in the session, please ask me questions on what you're seeing. Please ask me questions on what I'm talking, because only then there is any productivity of me being here, right? So what has happened is, coming back to the topic, the future of EdTech assimilation with K12. Before the pandemic happened, I had written an article which was published by a couple of magazines, Times, and it was printed in the print also. To give you a perspective, actually, just bear with me, guys. I'm gonna just open Google, and I'm gonna show you something which will probably give you a perspective on my journey, to be honest, and that would help you understand where I come from and what I'm talking about. So just bear with me, I would say. I'm just opening my screen, and I'm gonna try and come back to Zoom, and I'm gonna try and share, I suppose, my screen. Yeah. Okay. So all you have to do is, if you are actually watching, my name is Karandeep Singh. Even if you type Karandeep Singh, interestingly, according to the SEO of Google, I'm third most ranked name in the world when it comes to Karandeep Singh. If you write next to Karandeep Singh entrepreneur or edupreneur, it will automatically show you. So to give you a perspective, in the year 2022, for continuous work of working with the local governments in India, I was awarded moderator. Just a quick question. I hope my screen is visible to you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Roger. So I was awarded the Golden Glory Award by one of the famous film stars in India. Her name is Malaika Arora. This was basically because I started a new startup called Roar. You guys can read about it on LinkedIn or on the website. And this was a new startup which was basically dealing with liberal arts and performing arts, because I realized there was a massive gap in that, and it picked up a lot of traction in the last 1 to 2 years. It's completely online. But the reason that I'm showing you this is that when I talk something, I mean something. Where I come from is important for you to know. So way back in, I think this was the year 2020, Forbes magazine wrote an article about my educational journey. I had actually started a startup way back in 2017. It's called Kingborn International. You can always Google it. And this article that was published by Forbes magazine India basically talks about my educational journey, right from, as I was telling you, from Oxford University. I was actually a sound engineer. Might surprise you. Again, I don't know if anyone is listening. I feel like I'm on a midnight radio channel where I am talking to myself, and probably the moderators are like with me, which is great. But Forbes did an article on my journey, which basically talks about things that I've been doing back in the US. And I did my post-graduation medical education from Harvard Medical School, because I was also very interested in one more area, which most of our countries have been neglecting since education has started, which is children with special education needs. We are not focusing on these children, right? Parents have no fault, but at the same time, there is so much misinformation when it comes to so-called inclusive education. I'm going to talk about this shortly. So all you have to do is you just have to Google my name, and you're going to find pretty much everything that you need to know about me or about my journey. For example, my first my first language school that had started as my first startup was way back in 2017. There's an interview by one of the online magazines. Let's see if it loads and my internet is showcasing it properly. I'm just going to give it a second. Just bear with me, guys. So basically, I wanted to start a language school in Punjab, which is very close to the border with Pakistan. And I know a lot of the members of this convention are from Pakistan, and you would be happy to know that my ancestors are also from Pakistan. I technically belong to Lahore. And I wanted to start it at the border because back in Punjab, when it comes to language, especially English language, there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of, so it was an uphill battle. I started Kingborn International way back, and this interview will give you an idea, online interview about, why I started the school, what was the reason behind it, how it has expanded in the last probably 5 to 6 to 7 years. And because of this, I was awarded highly effective principals in 2019, blah, blah, blah. All of this, see, all of the recognitions don't just come blindly. It is because you are genuinely and extremely passionate about what you do. That is extremely important. So anyone who's watching, and if you're not interested in, let's say, answering questions, I think I've dropped a question to me, and I'm going to answer that. Now, I was given Entrepreneur of the Year award by the Indian Achievers Awards for Kingborn International in the year 2020. You can read about this also online, of course. So Google is literally like my diary, my SEO diary. Fortune magazine again, did an article about my EdTech work, because I was the first guy who said that outcome-based learning in EdTech, without that, there is no point of EdTech existing in the world. If the child is just watching fancy videos, and is not actually able to give any outcome, it's just like me going to a classroom and teaching a lecture. The knowledge is there in the brain, but you're not able to actually transmit it in any practical way. So if the world right now is looking for innovation, is looking for creativity, and knowledge alone cannot do that. Where the edtechs are stuck or have been stuck is they've been able to create a very beautiful model of knowledge, but they've not been able to create outcome-based learning. That means, how do you assess this knowledge using technology? A lot of them have come with a lot of solutions, but I still am very skeptical, to the point that and I'll show you my model in a while, or you could read about it even online. To be honest, that's not a problem for me. Let me just see. There's a question posted here by Mr. Rabit. How does hybrid learning differ from blended learning? Well, to answer your question, blended learning and hybrid learning are pretty much not very different from each other. See, schools, for example, and I hope the person who asked this question is able to hear this. Hybrid means that you're a school who is able to deliver physical classroom-based learning and at the same time are able to create a digital e-school. To give you a perspective, just bear with me. It's a good question. Thank you for asking that. I'm going to open my PowerPoint back and try and show you what I mean by this. So, for example, now NEP happened in India. We're not going to go through all of these things. There are too many technical things. Anyone who wants to read about this, feel free. I will send it to you. So see, when it comes to e-learning, right? I was looking at something called experiential learning. Now, experiential learning is hands-on. Anything that I'm teaching you online has to have practical hands-on experience when you are doing it wherever you are. So my first question to EdTech companies is or was, are you able to create solutions where the children or students, or for that matter, even because I've been working with, colleges where I've been working with, continuing education, I'll come to that. Are you able to create practical solutions to the physical problems that we are facing right now? Do you have a strong execution strategy? So in Rankpedia, I muted myself. Sorry about that. So in India, when this model was launched 2 years back, there was a massive uproar about the national education policy. So I'm going to show you, to answer your question, experiential learning is important to hybrid learning. How does it differ from blended learning is important to understand. See, experiential learning means that you challenge a child and at the same time you take them through an adventure. If it does not have application to life, there is no point of learning. That means that tomorrow when I go for a job and I have MA, BA, double MA on my CV, nobody cares about my CV anymore. If the knowledge is with me, when I used to interview people, I would just say a simple thing, that anything that you are telling me about, I can just Google it. But can you use this knowledge to create, can you use this knowledge to, I'm going to give you a simulation. Let's say, for example, can you show me how you're going to solve the problems? That is why when I opened the presentation today, or when I opened the session, I started with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. All of these things that we're talking about have no relevance because your planet by 2030 is going to be not habitable. Because at the rate at which we are going as a complete entity, as a world, you are talking about education, I'm talking about education, but my biggest worry right now is all of these fancy things, are they going to do anything for the children? Because do they even have a planet to live on? So my biggest challenge right now is, how do I make sure, or how do I contribute to a future where the children have hands-on experiential learning, where they understand what's happening in the world, application to life? Are they having compassion? I hate to say this, but the ex-president of the most powerful country in the world, Mr. Donald Trump, said that global warming, and I quote, is a myth, which was quite shocking because I feel really sad for his teachers, or for the kind of education he was given, that if he believes that global warming is a myth, the most powerful country in the world, the ex-president, thinks that global warming is a myth, then ladies and gentlemen, there is something really wrong with our world. So if we're talking about education. To give you an answer, hybrid education is nothing but uh, making sure that the child is able to create a balance between understanding what is good through technology, but at the same time is able to physically also use that knowledge for application and outcome. See, anyone who's from education will understand from knowledge, we move to analysis, assimilation. From assimilation, we move to creativity. From creativity, we move to innovation. If this cycle is not complete, there is no point to any kind of education, right? So another question I think has come, Mr. Amir Ahmed, 21st century skills are very important now. Yes, 21st century skills are extremely important. See, when we talk about 21st century skills, it goes without saying, you are leaving a world, the people who are at fault, the last 40 years, when the plastic generation, I call them the plastic generation, and I'm part of it. We never realized that we are leaving the world to our children where they have to fend for themselves. So if in education, you're not able to give them the solutions, the practicality to come up with solutions to make this planet habitable, then ladies and gentlemen, we have done malpractice, not only for our children, but we've done malpractice for the last 50 years to this planet. That is why I am talking about what I'm talking about to you right now here. Okay, so let me just stop my screen here and talk about the topic again. I'm going to come back to the topic, and I'm glad that some people are responding, and I'm glad. See, I was talking to you about, and I would really appreciate if some of you genuinely take your time out and go to the United Nations website and understand what actually sustainable, just bear with me guys, I think my screen has gone all wonky. If anyone can go into the sustainable development goals and understand exactly what they are, all you have to do is just go online and understand this. I have been literally fighting this battle, and now finally I have people who are working with me from different parts of the world on the sustainable development goals, and I have been able to incorporate the sustainable development goals into education, because without the children realizing that there are 17 SDGs, they start with no poverty, zero hunger, okay? They start with good health and well-being, basic things. They start with quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitization, affordable and clear energy, workplace and economic growth. These are not rocket science points, ladies and gentlemen. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure reduce inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, partnerships for the goals. So to answer you, to answer to your question, if you just click on any of them, for example, if I click on, let's say, quality education, all you have to do is just go through the United Nations effort. And being someone who has been working on this for quite a few years now, and directly being with the UN for so many years now, and being a part of this, I have realized that the criticality of our educational model does not depend whether your child is studying from any model, whether it is EdTech, whether it is K12. See, the EdTech assimilation to K12 will always stay. Hybrid learning is here to stay. Blended learning is here to stay. You cannot change that. But you have to make sure that experiential, hands-on learning, nature-based learning, sustainable education is the future. Without sustainable education, there is no future. If the child that you are educating cannot understand, and you can listen to the video here from the United Nations, General Secretary, and I've had the pleasure of talking to him on multiple occasions in the UN forums. and he is extremely worried. And you know that you're living in a world that not only are we facing the pandemic or global warming, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, I'm a realist, but you're also living in a world where some of the most developed parts of our country are at war. Simply because, why? Do you ever look back and think about why are they at war? Was there something wrong when they were small in their education system? What has been our education system? Competition. If you get 96% and the other one gets 84, you're better. If you come first in the race, you're better. The guy who came last, no, he's not good. Right from day one, you are psychologically traumatizing the child in believing that the only way to be successful in life is to get marks or to be number one. So you're building their ego. Competition is required, but in a collaborative way. So you have to move from the C, when I say the alphabet, and I'm putting it here in the chat box, from the C of competition to the C of collaboration. If we are not able to collaborate in a school, and it's a micro element, it starts from there, then you will have a lot of Vladimir Putin's coming in the next 5 to 10 years, ladies and gentlemen, and the world does not look bright. It looks bleak. And trust me, it all starts with education, especially in not just in Asian countries, in Western countries, we're always taught to compete, right? We're always taught you're best because you're able to win. That's great. But are you also a person who has leadership skills? And when I talk about leadership skills, it does not mean there's a big difference between a leader and a boss. Boss is someone who just tells you, do this or you're fired. Leader is someone who tells you, I'm going to work with you and I'm going to take you forward with me. Leadership skills are the number one requirement right now for our students. So to answer the question from one of the attendees, what strategies can schools use to improve hybrid learning models? Can schools use to improve hybrid? See, hybrid learning, first of all, we have to understand is only possible or will only be effective if you are able to use it in a balanced, blended way with physical learning. You cannot take the school life, the school experience, the physical experience of a classroom away from a child. That's a humanistic perspective. You cannot believe teachers can never be replaced by AI. Ladies and gentlemen, this is coming from a guy who's been working with the EdTech industry for a while, has realized this. You cannot take nature away from a child. On the contrary, nature is the only thing that they have to save. See, tomorrow, you might have seen all kinds of science fictional elements where there are no trees. Do you think it's possible if the child who's 5 years old now, you have brought that child into this world, whoever you are in the world, is it not your responsibility to equip that child to face the future? You might not be there in the future. You are a perishable item. Remember that. Human beings have forgotten one thing, and I talk about it from a very spiritual perspective, from a very philosophical perspective. We have forgotten that we are perishable items. We are not here forever, but we have brought life. We are bringing life on this planet every second as we speak. What is their future? My answer or my question is, what is their future? How are you planning to make sure that these kids are able to face what's coming to them in this world? How will they be innovators? How will they be leaders? How will they be compassionate? How will they be, empathetic, have empathy for each other? How will they work together? If they're not able to work together, do you think there's a world possible? If you create more Donald Trumps, if you create more Putins, then you are failing the education system. That is why I'm coming back to the topic of the future of EdTech assimilation. Yes, EdTech assimilation will stay with K12, that is kindergarten to 12th. It will also stay with the new model, which has been running in the United States and the UK. But when I was back in the UK, I have been using continuing education. Continuing education is something I want you to read about. I'm going to quickly take you through what is continuing education, which is extremely important, guys. It is extremely important for you. You need to know what is continuing education. Just bear with me, and I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to quickly show you another aspect of hybrid learning. Okay, so just bear with me, and thank you for being patient with my points. So continuing education, apart from e-learning, which is a blend of what we call ethics, and it's also a blend of what we call like, to give you an example, why did I create Rankpedia the way I did? You can Google the company. Right now, I'm not associated with Rankpedia. I have taken a different route altogether. I am running a complete nature-based, forest-based education school. And you can Google it, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love if you connect with me on LinkedIn. The school is called the Wells Academy. They have been for the last 7 to 8 years running forest-based education program, completely experiential. Every single child in my school, and I'm the director and the head of school, every single child in my school, and I'm proud to say this, is so compassionate about a single leaf. They are working not just with science, mathematics, but that at the same time, they're working with organic farming. They're working with forest education program. I wrote the forest education program in the year 2019, and I was awarded by the Department of Education of the Indian government for writing that program, and it has been assimilated in the national education policy. So why did I bring, why am I talking about this? One of the edtechs is because it was working with hands-on learning, blended solutions. It was NAP enabler. So countries like India can only be successful if they are able to do experiential, or as somebody said, 21st century skills, right? That is important. Now, e-schooling is basically something that is a hybrid of, let's say, 80% online or 20% offline. It's up to you. See, hybrid learning is very creative and innovative. You can use e-schooling the way you want. Right now, we have something called digital tinkering. Digital tinkering is nothing but you're able to do physics experiments right online by joining circuits without actually going to a physics lab. So our technology has reached that point, but the actual joy of doing an experiment can never be taken away from an actual physical lab. And by God's grace, we have our labs back. And to a lot of people who are watching, who might be adults right now, you need to understand that, for example, I'm going to quickly take you through this. You need to look at something called continuing education. And I would love to ask this question. Do we know what is continuing education? Continuing education is for people who are now outside, who are working, people who have completed their graduation but are still unemployed. Why? Because they do not have industry skills. They do not have skills that the industry wants. They might have degrees. You can have 10 different degrees, and I can give you on paper, you will still not get a job if you don't have personality or personal skills. If you don't have people skills, you will not get a job. So that's why I introduced in India something called continuing education, which has already been running in our world by, I learned this model. See, I always stand on the shoulders of giants. I don't say that I create things from scratch. I have been doing continuing education right from the 90s from Harvard University myself. So I know that there are a lot of universities that are running continuing education. If you look at the numbers, I'll show you something very interesting. Forget about all these numbers. Right now, the employability of the Indian graduate, according to the Feb 2021 report, in front of you, as of 2021, more than half of our country is unemployed. And to give you stalking numbers, if you look at stream-wise, you would see that in 2021, right now, some of the streams, we only have employment of just 25%, like Polytechnic. In pharma, we have 37. Rest of the country, and you know the population of this country, guys, it's massive. So these are stark stats that I'm giving you. That was one of the reasons that I created continuing education into EdTech. It's very simple. I'm working as we speak with numerous universities, Indian, American, UK based, for a simple reason, because I realized competition is not the way forward. I need to work with people. We need to work with people, because this is focused to students who might have graduated, they can't get jobs. This is also part of entrepreneurship. I realize, and I've been talking to students, for a long time, and I realize that students are having so many amazing skills, but there is nobody to mentor them. So I realized that there are so many people who can be mentors, So always have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. That is very, very important. Okay. You cannot have a fixed mindset and say, this is it. It doesn't work like that. It has to be a growth mindset. It is extremely, extremely important. I have always, and I can guarantee, and I'll tell you, I come from a military background. So when I was in Oxford, I used to have 4 jobs. I used to work as a bartender. I used to work as a nightclub photographer. I used to work as a delivery person, and I used to work in McDonald's. Why? Because I wanted to pay my own rent. I wanted to have money to eat. I wanted to pay my own college fees, and at the same time save money so that when I probably take up a job, I can do something. I struggled throughout my early 20s purposely to learn the value of money and to learn the value of being a professional and a student. Your theoretical skills are not enough. Your life skills will always come from work. So I always tell students, especially young students, college students, that you have to work along with your education. You cannot expect education to give you work. That doesn't work. 50% theoretical knowledge will come from education, 50% will come from life. If life skills are not with you, you will not be, if you're not exposed to the real world, it will be very hard for you to find jobs. There is a response. Thank you, Mr. Amir Ahmed, Amir Ahmed Salim Khalif. We need to help students to deal with the following: creative thinking, communication, collaboration, collaborating citizenship, and computational thinking. I absolutely agree with you. And I'm going to talk about this. See, if we always talk about these stereotypical terms, right? Thinking outside the box. Can anyone, Mr. Amir, if you're listening, can you tell me what thinking outside the box means for you? If you're still here, I would love to hear from you, because we use this term a lot in corporates and even in school. Think outside the box, think outside the box. Why do we do that? Can you tell me, why do we do that? Any ideas? And why don't we communicate? It's an important point. I'll give an example. When I moved to England, I moved all by myself. My 60% of my friends were from different parts of the world, but the warmest people that I made friends with, and I'm an Indian. See, when you leave all this political mumbo jumbo, most of my warmest friends were from Pakistan. I lived for the first 4 years of my life in England in a house sharing of a Pakistani cab driver, because that's all I could afford. But he was one of the warmest and the most amazing person that I ever met. It didn't matter where you came from, whether I was living with Lebanese people or African people or people from Spain. It doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is what you believe in. What matters is politics don't come unless you want them to come. Religion doesn't discard or create unless you want it to create problems. I am not going to go into politics here, but all I wanted to touch upon is that we need to make sure our children are always away from this small little evil called political exploitation, because a lot of political exploitation happens in the name of education, and we have to be very careful that our children of tomorrow do not fall prey to that. Collaborative citizenship is very important. See, the pandemic might have damaged the world, but it has also had a positive impact on the world, that it has shown that we are actually a connected world. We are actually together. and we can solve any problem if we put our minds together. That is very, very important. Mr. Zahir, I just wanted to check how much time have we covered, because I'm going to be now moving to the second phase of the session, and how much time are we left with in the session?
So we have approximately 50 minutes.
Sorry?
We have 50 minutes, sir.
50 minutes, 50, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So anyone who's listening and who's still here, and people have been told come and go, which is absolutely fine, not a problem. I'm going to be showing you a second very important project that I've undertaken in the last few years of my career. And I always talk from my own career. I don't talk about data, or I won't talk to you about some kind of a case study. I will always talk to you about me, because I want to connect to you human to human. I want to connect to you as a person. I want to connect to you with my own journey. So if I have to connect to you with my own journey, why am I going to talk about something XYZ? That is not my journey. My journey is here, and my journey is to connect with you. My journey is to show you the challenges that I faced, the projects that I worked on. What were the failures? What were the successes? How did I do that? Right? So that is very important. So guys, I'm going to be sharing with you one of the business plans that I worked as a senior consultant, and I created this business plan for a group of medical colleges in India who wanted to go into EdTech. So this is going to answer a very important critical question. Please pay attention to this, because this is going to answer a question of how from a physical setup you move into a digital setup. So how do you move from as I said again, I'm going to repeat, how do you move from an offline physical setup into a hybrid digital setup? So I created this solution for this group of colleges who have been in India for the last 25 years, but realized that the future of education has to be blended or a hybrid, right? So I'm going to actually share with you the actual real business plan that I had done for them. So let me just share my screen, and I'll actually take you through the business plan, which is quite important for you to understand. I think there's a response from Mr. Amir. So thinking out of the box to explore ideas that are creative and unusual and that are not limited or controlled by rules, traditions to solve this puzzle. Absolutely beautiful. What is the biggest puzzle, Mr. Amir? The biggest puzzle is the puzzle of life, right? Isn't it? So you're absolutely right. You cannot limit yourself. But always when we have this creative bandwidth, this intellectual bandwidth, we have to make sure that it is connected to our quality. For example, I could talk for hours, but does that add value to you as a listener? Right? So whenever we teach I teach in universities and I teach in schools, right? So whenever I teach students, I always tell them, be creative, think outside the box, but make sure dreams without goals are just dreams. So if you don't make an action plan, if you don't work on them practically, then you will just end up dreaming. And dreaming is beautiful. I love it. But if you can convert it into an actual action plan, then yes, you are thinking outside the box, because now you have created something practical and now you have something with you. So I'm going to take you through another very important session. Just bear with me, please. Just a second. Okay. Right. Moderator, is my screen visible to you, please? Hello. I just wanted to check if.
Visible.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was a business plan as a senior advisor to a group of colleges in India, which had 20 colleges running for the last 25 years, brought me in as a senior consultant and advisor to convert their 20 different medical colleges into a online vertical. Now, this is very important. How do you take the legacy of a group of colleges which have been there physically present for 20 years and convert it into an online vertical? Bear in mind, the colleges were not shutting down. They wanted to add a new vertical. That is where hybrid element comes in. So the topic that we're talking about, right, is the future of EdTech versus K12 or higher education. So this is a college. So business plan was quite simple. Positive disruption in medical education through EdTech assimilation. What positive disruption basically means is you are bringing something into the market or into the business, which is breaking the status quo. When you break the status quo means that you are bringing something new into the industry, which is breaking the norm as it existed. See, positive disruption is something that we have to understand very carefully. I wanted to bring something new into the medical education field, which would add new value propositions by using technology as my medium of assimilator. So I had a mission statement. I wanted to offer comprehensive online educational platform for medical and healthcare professionals to continue their education, to create a solution-based EdTech platform with a wide penetration for medical students and educators. Now, this is interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because what I realized is that medical education cannot be limited to students. Now, let's say you're a doctor, right? Or you're a corporate hospital. You have to obviously upscale. I just spoke to you about continuing education. So I created a business model which would not just be limited to students. It will be for doctors, for nurses. It will be open to surgeons. It will be open to all kinds of people who need education to keep upscaling. See, in our careers, we cannot be stagnant. And we're always in this place where we have to move up by knowing more. So in medical education, this was my USP. So my USP was, my unique selling point for this organization was they already had 15,000 students in their active database. Okay. So if anyone knows about EdTech, you always create a beta version of a product. Beta version of a product is basically a testing version. So let's say I create an app. All of you must be using apps like Instagram or, so before these apps went live, they went through beta testing. This is something that happens in EdTech also, and also non-EdTech. Any technology-based platform would go through a beta testing. So I realized instead of testing it into the market, I'm going to use the existing cohort of 15,000 students and give them the beta version, which will make my life much easier. So anyone who knows about technology knows that to build any kind of technology platform, you need something called UI and UX design. And I wanted to make sure that both synchronous and asynchronous learning was happening for this platform. That means synchronous is live teaching, what I'm doing to you right now. Live means I'm on the camera. Asynchronous is like Moodle. All the platform is already loaded for you and it's a self-paced learning. So I wanted to create a blend between this. Now, to answer your question, somebody had asked, what's the difference between hybrid? See, hybrid and blend can also be used in this way. Blend can be within an organization where you're blending, let's say, live teaching versus self-paced teaching. Hybrid would be curriculum based. That means how you're teaching. Maybe 50% is through physical infrastructure and 50% is through online infrastructure. So that's another very important stark difference between hybrid and blend as a Lexis. Lexis is as a word, right? So I give the organization 4 value propositions. And this is an actual business plan that you're seeing, which was approved, which then later I was able to develop into a strong organization, which is doing very successfully now, not just in India, but in the US also. So value proposition number one, I said that they have to partner with renowned medical professionals, which will enable us to present the courses to our students and help them meet their learning goals. So that means you have to partner with different kinds of corporate hospitals, medical professionals, and use them to leverage your product. The advantage, again, I repeat, with this organization was they already had the education with them, they had the students with them, but I wanted to take them to the next level of bringing in doctors, nurses, surgeons, as I just gave you an example. Value proposition two, anytime when you create a presentation or you do a business plan, please remember to add value propositions. As someone who is pitching, a lot of you must have seen Shark Tank, right? So when you're pitching a product, if it doesn't have value propositions, then what's the point of me investing in your product? Why should I buy or invest in your product if it doesn't have scalability? So on top, you can see scalable reach and potent content delivery is important. If your product cannot expand, that's why I told you most of the edtechs in India, why they are failing is because they did not have a scalable model of sustainability for the next 5 years. They were thinking short term. They should have been thinking long term. Value proposition two is blended training solutions will combine traditional e-learning like live virtual classes, what I'm doing with you right now, clinical bedside learning, mobile learning models to deliver impactful courses to our students. Number three, this comes to business. Anyone who's done business would know that business B2C means direct business to customer. B2B means from my business to another business. And DST is direct selling. That is also very important. If you have any questions, please do ask me. And very importantly, value proposition number four, I did not want to touch tier 1 cities. I wanted maximum penetration into smaller townships in India, into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 in the phase 1 of the company. I think somebody's written something in the chat. Let me just read. The future of metaverses. Fair enough. Sure, I'll come back to that. Next thing that I had to show to the company is that there has to be a content team which is going to write the academic content. Then that content will be converted into scripting. That means academic content is not what you see in an EdTech platform. It is converted just like a movie. You know how you watch a movie? The only difference between EdTech and a movie is in a movie, you write a script. In an EdTech also, you write a script, by the way. You should know that. You cannot have pure academic content being delivered in front of the camera. So it's very similar to making a film. There are people who are storyboard artists who will convert the academic content into a script, which will then be taken to the video team, which will shoot that script, just like a movie. And the tech team is going to take this data and upload it on the platform. And then comes the sales and marketing team, which is going to push it out into the market. It sounds simple. Trust me, it's not. It's not at all simple. So the market size was shown to the stakeholders to make them understand what is the future. So I never go without facts. At this point, when I had done this presentation, the biggest number one opportunity in the market was in the healthcare education sector. Why? Because the typical K12 education sector was already saturated in the Indian market and even in the US market. And this is a projection that I'm showing you, which is a fact-based projection showing that the future of education is going to be in EdTech healthcare. I don't know if you guys have heard of a company called Metaversity. If you've not, just Google it. You'll get the answer that I'm talking about. Now, at the same time, I showed them how the users are going to sign into the project. You know, B2B, B2C, B2B to B2C. These were, again, technical terms. I'm not going to spend too much time into it. All I'm trying to show you is when I do presentations, when I do business models, I do my homework. Report by Technovia, which is one of the #1 companies which does surveys, medical education is poised to grow by 129.66 billion from the year 2020 to 2024, which is actually happening as we speak right now. So when you are pitching to a company, just to give you a perspective, please make sure, especially do your homework. Okay. One of the reasons that in the materialistic format I have been successful is that along with, talking, I am able to project innovation, as we just spoke about, but I'm also able to show how to actually create the product. It's not just about talking. Nobody buys talking. How do you actually successfully do it? And whenever I hire people into my companies, I make sure I hire innovators. If you are a college graduate, but I see spark inside you, I would prefer you more than a guy who might have worked for the last 20 years, but is stuck, is having a fixed mindset and is not ready to move forward. So a guy who has a fixed mindset, cannot evolve, is not someone I would want to work with. If you're ready to learn, unlearn, relearn, then I'm ready to work with you. So the future of our education sector, when we're talking about the topic, right, EdTech assimilation and K12, the hybrid model is here to stay. Yes. But right now, the EdTechs are struggling really badly in India and also in a lot of other countries for a very simple reason: scalability, sustainability, understanding the actual requirement of quality control. If I tell you the inside story of the EdTech industry, it might turn into a very, it could turn into a very tricky situation, but quality control is something that the EdTech has never maintained. We call them subject matter experts. Technically, SMEs, that is, subject matter experts, are the people who write the content. We do not understand in our developing world the importance of plagiarism. Plagiarism is somebody else wrote the idea, but you just copy pasted it saying that, it's okay. You cannot do that. That's a criminal offense. So the number one problem that happened in EdTech in India is we try to hire cheap labor, cheap employees by investing really less into the education part of the company. We invested more in the technology part of the company. So the educators were not of the same quality that you would expect from a high school. Let's say there's a really good school. What is their bread and butter? Apart from infrastructure, it is good teachers, good educators. But the educators the EdTech companies thought about the fact that technology is going to win. But the irony is, all of the EdTechs right now in India, including Byju's, are running around trying to create offline physical schools because they have realized they made a massive mistake in choosing to compromise on the quality of education and thinking that technology is going to wow the parent. But see, the parent is also a human being. At the end of the day, the parent realizes that the quality of education is always going to be in the hands of the educator. Educator can be empowered by technology. Educator cannot be replaced by technology. This is the hard truth that the EdTech industry across the world has realized. Whether you're sitting in the United Kingdom, whether you're sitting in a country like India, whether you're sitting in any other country in Southeast Asia or Asia or anywhere, quality education will always depend on the educator. How you use the educator to create a situation where, the technology can be harnessed perfectly by using the skills and the experience of the educators. Please do not do that. I want to share some important stats with you. In the first year of the pandemic, about 45% of teachers were laid off in the country like India, simply because they could not operate a PowerPoint. When they were in the classroom, they were magicians. They had a number of years of experience, but just because they could not do Google Meet properly, or they could not do moving presentation behind, or the kind of presentations I've shown you, they were fired for less experienced teachers who were very good at technology. So this mistake was not just done by EdTech companies. Even schools, in that hurry-burry, ended up compromising on the actual quality of education. And you know what is the irony? You have all heard about boomerang, right? And Newton's third law of motion is, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Now, all of these schools are looking back and realizing that the quality of educator matters more than the quality of technology. That is why this topic is very important. That the future of EdTech assimilation with K12 or higher education colleges, is this model here to stay? It can only survive if the EdTech companies realize, and at the same time, the K12 education industry realizes, they need to work together. Nobody can overpower the other. So see, there's a shift. During the pandemic, the edtechs were overpowering the K12. Now the K12 schools are trying to dictate terms and overpower the edtechs. It's not about competition. Unless and until they decide to work together, there's going to be a gap. Second problem, if you're not going to do your homework, and I'm not talking about the children's homework, if you're not going to look at the future of education, which is in sustainable education, if you're not going to bring nature, if you're not going to do organic based, sustainable based education practices, if you're not going to remove plastic from your campuses, whether it is physical, whether it's online, you are only destroying the planet further. So ironically, it is the job of the educator to educate the child to not use non-renewable sources of energy. But if they are doing it themselves, then it contradicts the whole logic of education. That is why I implore, I request to anyone who's listening, please try and read about sustainable education. If you have any questions about it after the session, please connect with me. I can take you through multiple levels of what actually sustainable education actually means. How does it actually work? What is the logic behind it? At this point, moderator, I think we are left with half an hour. Mr. Zahir, if you're there.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to check, are we left with half an hour of the session?
Yes, sir.
Right, so I'll just be playing a video to kind of give a perspective to what's on the other side of success. And then I'll be talking about this video. So just bear with me, Mr. Zahir. I'm just going to try and load the video. And at the same time, if there are any more questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll be loading the video. Thank you. Right, so I'm back. I found the video that I wanted to show you guys. Just bear with me. I'll just share my screen and try and play the video for you. I hope it's, just let me know, moderator, if the video is working. I'll try to keep the, is the video visible to you, moderator?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So this is just basically an example of what hard work can do. So this is last year in Mumbai, 2021 December during Christmas, where I was awarded one of the awards for some of my hard work. I wanted to share this with all of you and then probably have some Q&A sessions before we end the session. So I'm just going to play the video, and I believe I have to use my laptop volume. I hope you can hear it. Right, just bear with me. Whoever was able to watch that, I'm not sure anyone is there because I think it's late in India. Obviously, it's midnight, but I guess I got the midnight session. But that was just a small snippet to show that hard work, perseverance, resilience does always lead to success. Right now, I'm just dropping my moderator. You can share this with anyone who would like to connect with me on LinkedIn. You guys are connected with me, but anyone from the audience, if they would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can share my LinkedIn profile with them, which if they have any questions and if they want to connect with me on any aspects of collaboration, would help them. So I'm just dropping my LinkedIn profile here, and I think we're almost at the fag end of our session. So, Mr. Zahir, just wanted to check if anyone is listening, or if we have any people still left in the session that I can talk to.
I think Mr. Amir is still in the session.
Sorry?
Mr. Amir Ahmed is still in the session. I think so.
Mr. Amir is still there in the session.
Yes, because he just texted wonderful.
Oh, he's texted me on WhatsApp. Sorry.
No, sir. On the chat box of WordTech, from where I'm copying the messages.
Okay, I understand. Right. So, Mr. Amir, seems like it's you and me tonight. For me, it's midnight, but it's interesting. Mostly, I give sessions where there are more than 200 to 300 people, but at the same time, I've had smaller sessions where there are 30 people or 40 people or 50. But this is a new experience where I have you, Mr. Amir, here still with me. So, in a way, thank you to the organization to organizing this. Let's have a one-to-one, Mr. Amir, since we are the only two people actually here, and I don't see any more any other participants or anyone else here. So I was actually eagerly waiting to connect with more people. I do hope I think I'm speaking on the 14th again, from what I understand. I do hope there are more people coming in into your sessions. But Mr. Amir, do you have any questions that you would like to ask? Your responses have been beautiful, by the way. I love the way you've been articulating your points, and I love the way that you did listen to the session, and I was able to share multiple dimensions of edtech, schooling, higher education, continuing education, the possibility of edtech actually surviving this wave of dissemination right now with which is happening to them. Because to be honest, it is going to be the next 4 years are going to be defining for the edtech space, if they're going to be able to come hand in hand back with the kindergarten to 12 section, the schooling system. Unfortunately, I hope there is no other pandemic or monkeypox or pigpox or any other pox waiting for us but knowing how our world works, we never know what's going to happen in the future. But as of now, Mr. Amir, before we wind up, do you have any questions for me? Anything that you would like to ask me? Anything that you would like to discuss with me? Because as Mr. Zahir has put, you're the only one who's still here in the session. I would love to have a one-to-one with you, since you and me are only here together, and we're almost at the, I suppose, at the end of our midnight session for me. So anything, Mr. Amir, that you would like to discuss with me, if you're still here in the session. Mr. Zahir, I lost your voice there for a second. Sorry.
Sir,
Hello.
he didn't send any questions yet, but he's saying that he'll get in touch with you on LinkedIn. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, Mr. Zahir, I'm going to end with a small summary of what we spoke about, and please do check with the organizers that generally, as you told me, that people come and go and all of those things, but I would like to use my time more productively when it comes to our sessions. But I would like to summarize that, yes, education in the world right now is at a very pivotal stage. A lot of people, parents, schools, edtechs, governments have realized that the future is only one way, which is student-centric, innovative, and sustainable based education. There is no other way left for us in this world. That's point number one. Point number two, without collaboration and working together as nations, not just as schools, we cannot find solutions. What might be happening in one country as a good practice has to be shared with another country as a good practice. That's the only way we can build a future. Running meaningless wars, egoistic battles, meaningless political gimmicks are very short-lived, because they have no space in the world of the the intellectuals. It does not have any space for the people who are forward thinkers, people who are futuristic in their perspective. So I'm going to end with a quote that I always do, and you can find about this quote. I always use it, that there is no point in settling for a life which is small. There is no point in living up to your potential that you're capable of. These were the words from Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela wrote these words when he was finally released from the prison, and he fought his whole life for equal rights in an apartheid South Africa. And I've always taken him as an idol in my life, because he never wavered from day one till the day he died from what he believed in. So the only thing I would end the session with is that you were born original. Please do not die a copy. Be yourself, and please try to innovate when it comes to uh, any kind of technology or any kind of service that you're providing. Do not get stagnant. You're not a vegetable, you're not a potato, you're not an apple, you're a human being. So the beauty of being a human being is you can evolve, you can relearn, you can do new things, you can wake up every day and do something new. Understand the beauty of life, understand the beauty of being human, understand the beauty of being in love with your family, understand the beauty of being in love with collaborating, understand the beauty of being together with people as a community, because we are social animals, and if we talk to each other, there is not a single thing in this world that cannot be solved. So all I always tell people is please talk, and I hope that in the next session more people will talk to me, and I would get an opportunity to have a more interactive session. That's how I work. I'm not a lecturer. I believe in talking to people. I'm a communicator. So, Mr. Zahir, I think we can wind it off if it's okay with you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Zahir, for your moderation. And thank you so much. As I said, anyone who wants to know more about me, use Google or come to LinkedIn. I am always available. And thank you once again, for giving this opportunity for this session. And I do hope, Mr. Zahir, that next time we are able to pull in more crowd. I think if you put this recording somewhere on one of your platforms or on YouTube or something, I'm sure a lot of people would come in. You would find me on YouTube a lot in a lot of previous sessions and interviews. So my recommendation to the organization would be use YouTube, use your social media. You guys are doing well. Use this video to try and build traction for the Sunday's session. But once again, thank you so much to Mr. Zahir and also Mr. Amir, who has stayed with me through this midnight hour. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful morning, evening, or late evening, or for me, midnight. Thank you once again, Mr. Zahir. I hope I can log off now. Should be fine.
Yes, sir.
All right. Cheers. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.